Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us this afternoon for a very interesting session with Ambassador Dambajav, who will talk about, of course, Mongolia, India-Mongolia relations, and Mongolian foreign policy. This is part of our monthly conversations that we have with diplomats serving in Delhi. And this week we are very fortunate to have His Excellency Ambassador Dambajav with us, who has very kindly consented to talk about a range of issues around Mongolia and Mongolian foreign policy. And it's wonderful to see so many of you youngsters as part of this conversation. Ambassador, your charm has brought all this youth to you. So it's now up to you to floor them more. I'll leave the floor to you with your initial remarks. After that, we'll have some conversation on the range of topics.
Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, thank you. Thank you for having me today. And I'm happy to see so many young, bright faces. So I'll try to not to be boring. So that's why I decided to bring some videos. So you can play all around while I'm talking about boring things, so you can see, at least enjoy the video. Okay. I'm representing the country in Northeast Asia, Mongolia. Due to geographical location, we are sandwiched between Russia and China. We're a landlocked country. By population, we're less than one district of Delhi, which is what? We're only 3.4 million. And more than half of them living in the capital city. But by territory, we're comparatively big. We 4 times the size of France or more than half of India. So you will get a better idea who we are. So as a landlocked country, we're very rich in minerals. We have everything, starting with all chemical elements of the Mendeleev's table of chemical elements, starting with the gold, copper, you name it, the rare earth elements, uranium, gas, oil, whatever, we do have it. And we new to democracy, as you probably some of you know, that we for 70 years we were part of so-called communist regime, but the last 30 years we shifted to the democratic country, so we open to the open. And this term, we believe that we have a lot to learn from India, mother of democracy. So in this regard, I'm happy that I am the person who's representing my country to India. So as for me, I'm a career diplomat. I was working in our embassy in Russia. Then I was posted in our mission to UN in New York. I was also posted in our embassy in Bulgaria. And my last assignment was Canada, Ottawa. So as you can see, as a diplomat, as a career diplomat, I'm dealing with India very first time. Mainly I used to deal with the UN, Americas, Middle East mostly. But this is not my first time in India. Last time I was in India in 2009 when I was a chief of protocol of foreign ministry. And at that time our president paid a state visit to India, and I was as a chief of protocol. I accompanied him to his visit to India. So I arrived in November of 2021, and since my last visit to 2009, I can see drastic changes, at least within the Delhi. So in this term, I believe that as a bilateral relations, Mongolia and India can gain a lot from each other. So there is a huge potential, as I can see it. In terms of our foreign policy, Mongolia conducts the open, multilateral, independent foreign policy, and we keen desire to establish friendly relations to all countries around the world. We believe that any issue should be resolved on the table through the negotiations, in other ways, in diplomatic ways. So, of course, since our country is landlocked, sandwiched between 2 big countries, states, our priority, number 1 priority in the foreign policy is our 2 neighbors, Russia and China. But at the same time, we develop the concept of third neighbor, in which we include all the well-developed countries, starting from the Americas, European Union, India, Turkey, Korea, Japan, as well as the UN. So since the COVID-19 struck the world, our government is doing a lot to recover from the impact of the COVID, and our government come up with the so-called Vision 2050, in which we outlined our development policy, how we see it, our development, what we can achieve in that. And within the short-term plan, we come up with a new revival policy, which is aiming 2030. So at that time, we hope that by GDP will be doubled, and our foreign policy will be more open, more engaging to all countries around the world. But we have to always we have to be realistic, especially diplomats. I had a saying that diplomats are very naive, very the optimistic people. We should be. But at the same time, we have to be realistic. So given the geopolitical location of Mongolia, our population size, our economic capacity, we should develop such a foreign policy as a part of continuation of the domestic foreign policy, which brings us, which fulfills our requirements need, what we are looking for, how we proceed with the certain obstacles in our, especially in economic term, because we are a landlocked country. That's why we have said that stretch your legs within the size of your blanket. So we cannot stretch legs out since our territory is limited. As a young people, I would like to encourage you to come to visit Mongolia to get better idea what I'm talking about. And this term in Mongolia we have is this saying that it's better to see you once than hear 1,000 times. So I would like to invite you to visit Mongolia one day. I believe we can offer a lot to Indians to see, to learn, because we have a lot of things common. Another one thing that I think that I should mention to you guys, it's I believe in karma. Since I'm the Buddhist, I believe in karma, and I see that my appointment as an ambassador in India, it's continuation of my family karma, let's say. My father used to study in Dharamsala for 5 years. My brother studied in Hyderabad for almost 2 years. My baby sister graduated from the Pune University. So I'm the fourth member of my family coming to India. So I decided to continue this good tradition, and I brought my nephew to study in Goenka University. So I'm sorry, but you guys will be keeping with my family for a long time. So that will be for sure. Thank you.
That's certainly, Ambassador, that's our good karma to have you and your family so deeply involved with our country. Excellency, if we can start, this engagement by perhaps you talking a bit, about the kind of geopolitical environment that the world finds itself in today. There is a lot of geopolitical contestation happening around us. Great powers are back to doing geopolitics with great vigor. Multilateral institutions are not working. And as you pointed out, you have Mongolia as a country that has always lived with two big neighbors astride its boundaries. What do you think are the challenges for a country like Mongolia in this geopolitical environment? Are they peculiar to your geography, or are they now subsumed by the fact that most countries in the world are facing those kind of challenges because of the unique structural and institutional changes that we are witnessing?
I believe that since the world changing quite rapid, starting with the COVID and then the war between Russia and Ukraine. As a landlocked country, we are not only of us. There are 34 landlocked countries around the world, and that's because of our geopolitical locations, we facing a lot of difficulties. At least let's start with the Mongolian, the natural resources. When we, for example, want to export our cooking coal, which is one of the best in the world, and we want to bring it to India, there is certain obstacles from our big neighbors. Let's not name them, but there's some obstacles unintentionally, let's say, that's what exactly happens. And especially given the geopolitical location, the population size, our big neighbors is doing we cannot blame them. They do in own politics. It's their duty they protect their rights. It's our duty to promote the rights. So we cannot say that they're doing bad things. They're doing what they have to do. So it gives the small nations like Mongolia to be more active, more, let's say, smart, or more, it's modern day, we can say, more IT-oriented. Otherwise, given our reality, we have to think about our space, our size, how far our foreign policy can reach. Because there are certain aspects of the country when you do proceed with the certain decisions within your border, but somehow it will affect your foreign policy, your neighbor. So we have to think twice before doing some actions. So that gives us a challenge, of course, and it gives us a lot of time consuming, which is precious for everybody. So yes, there are issues that we are facing today, but there are, of course, solutions. Since, as I said, as a diplomat, we have to be optimistic. We are optimistic people, so we see solutions there. We see that there are ways how to behave, how to deliver our position to our neighbors. Happily, we are in very good relations with our, as we call, eternal neighbors. So we are doing okay, but of course we want to do better.
Esther, in terms of your, the idea that you posited, the third neighbor idea, your foreign policy concept of 2011 talked about the need for Mongolia to increase its relations or enhance its ties with the developed world beyond, say, your immediate neighbors. How has that process moved forward? Have you been? How would you rate that? How successful you have been? Of course, in today's context, we keep on hearing a lot about minerals partnership that is being resurrected or being created. Recently, there were reports of course, US trying to engage substantively with Mongolia on minerals, critical minerals, but also, a bouquet of countries. There was this idea of US, Korea, Mongolia partnership on critical minerals. So how, when you look at the developed world, when you look at that ambition that Mongolia had espoused in 2011, how far that has gone and how far that has allowed you to balance your relations with your neighbors?
Yes, the third neighbor concept by itself, it's not new. Since the Mongolia became the democratic country and we adopted the first democratic constitution in 1992, our concept of national security and the concept of the foreign policy was firstly adopted in 1994. And of course, it was moderated due to the course of the development of time. So in that the foreign policy concept of 1994, it was, from the very beginning, was stated that Mongolia will conduct the open, democratic, peace-loving, and multipolar independent foreign policy. Based on that, we are doing our best on that. I'm not sure that it is wise to say that I can evaluate myself. Let's say Mongolians cannot say that we're doing great. Probably the world around us, neighbors like you, will say how we succeeding on that accomplishment. But personally, I believe we are doing okay, of course, and we have to always think, the much broader than only within the Mongolian border or our two neighbors. So nowadays we can see the world is changing fast. The IT technology, it's AI, you name it, everything is, world is changing. So to catch this pace and be in the same timing, let's say, management with the rest of the world, our foreign policy is very active. Within the last year, the president paid the official visit to Japan. Our speaker visited Turkey. The prime minister visited Singapore, Korea. Foreign minister visited more than 20 countries besides Russia and China. And of course, we have to see that you have to, as young people, you have to always remember that the foreign policy is the continuation of the domestic policy. So we're trying to deliver our foreign policy based on our domestic policy, our domestic developments, how we see the world. So as a third neighbor, the country which is relying heavily on the concept of third neighbor, only last year, for example, we received, besides the foreign ministers of Russia and China to Mongolia, we received high dignity starting from the president, speaker, foreign minister, prime minister of Canada, Japan, UK, Sweden, Poland, Germany, Korea, Laos. We also received the Secretary General of UN, and at least within this year, for example, we received the president of Poland, France, Kyrgyz paid a state visit to Mongolia. Of course, in just 1 month, last month, we received the speaker of Lok Sabha, Honorable Umberla, to Mongolia. So very soon we will receive the Pope, for the first visit since the Mongolia is a Buddhist country, and first time in our history the Pope will visit Mongolia. Today is tomorrow, starting from tomorrow, he's paying the 4 days visit to Mongolia. So just bringing you the example of this, all the visits, I'm trying to deliver saying that we are trying to expand our possibility horizon because all of those visits have certain agendas. Of course, the outcome of the visit should be result oriented. It shouldn't be just come visit to see how beautiful we are and go. No, there is always follow-up plans, always the agreements, bilateral agreements. So there is much more, I would say, accomplished as of today.
Yeah, one of the things that India, of course, has been grappling with over the last few years is the challenge from our neighbor, your neighbor, China. And there has been a change of perceptions about China in India. I think we have increasingly found in our surveys that China is becoming less popular for various reasons, and that there are no supporting constituencies for China in this country. Now, of course, yours is a different neighborhood. The China looms large there. What are the domestic perceptions of China as a neighbor, and how you have managed to develop relations or continue to have relations with China, perhaps attempting to keep those relationships on an equal footing? How effective has that been, and how effective you think your government and your policies have been in that direction? And particularly, I think, how is the youth in Mongolia? How is it? In which way it is tilting? Is it a very pro-China youth you have, or is it does the youth's aspirations in Mongolia at the moment more tilted towards the West?
So as I said before, Mongolia is a country which is sandwiched between two big neighbors, and of course, for us, Mongolia and India, maybe the most interesting neighbor is China. We have a very friendly relations with China. I believe China has 15 neighbors. I mean, on the landlocked. I mean, land size, not the ocean. So and almost all of them, except Mongolia, China has territorial dispute. Name it: India, Korea, Japan, or, the Kazakhstan, all the Central Asian countries, North Korea, even Russia, territorial dispute with China. But Mongolia, we somehow managed that we don't, only one neighbor of China that has no territorial dispute with China. We resolved the issue starting from 1961. So based on that, we are the country who managed to live with the Chinese people for many centuries. If we go back to history, it's us, Mongolians, who made Russia and China who are they today. If we go back to 13th century, it's Genghis Khan who conquered the whole of Russia at that time, when the capital of that time, Russia, was modern Kiev, Ukraine. So we conquered them, and we brought the capital from Kiev to Moscow, modern Moscow. And the same thing with China. The grandson of Genghis Khan, Kublai, he moved the capital of Mongols from Karakorum to Beijing, modern Beijing. So we made them as big as possible. And this remark, in this connection, I would like to recall just one little joke. In 1979, I believe, the President Nixon visited the first time in China, and they brought him to the Great Wall of China. And he said that, well, the nation who built this wall should be great. So Mongolians from the other side of the wall, we saying that if the nation who built that wall is great, so the nation who made them to build this wall should be greater. It's who we are, Mongols. So for us in China, it's always our neighbor from the south. We know who they are. We do some, of course, as a man, we do some mistakes, but we learn. So we're trying to be more independent. But given that our geopolitical location, given the economic situation, we heavily depend on the Chinese economy, because all our exports, most of them goes through China. So in some aspects, they can accidentally close the border somehow, but we just only to blame some persons, not the whole system. But please keep in mind that Mongolia is only democracy in that region, only one democracy. So we are open. Of course, we see and we support the developments of our birth neighbors, because it gives benefits to us too. So we want to see our two birth neighbors developing and as peaceful, stable within the border of the country, because the instability in the region is always bad for small countries, especially in case of Mongolia. And in case of the youth, of course, our youth is like all of you. They have all the access to internet. The internet, everything is open in Mongolia. It's everything. Everybody's using the phone, notebook, and everything. So, in that context, I would say the Mongolian youth is a little bit different from Chinese or Russians, where there's some certain limitations of the freedom to access to the press and the media. So, general conception, of course, we know who are Chinese, who are the Russians, so we know how to handle them, but it takes time.
Before I open this up for questions and comments from the members here, from audience here, one question that I would like to raise, and which I think it would be useful for you to just briefly touch upon, is India-Mongolia relations. You have we have Prime Minister Modi visiting there in 2015, and since then, how have you seen the trajectory evolve? What are the key areas in which India and Mongolia are focusing on at the moment, and what are the potential areas of cooperation that perhaps will define the trajectory of this relationship going forward?
To talk about our bilateral relations, I would first to go back a little bit to history, because we have very rich, long history. And as a young people, you should know about it, because the people, if you don't know the future, if you don't know your history, there is no future for you, as someone smart was told, So our history goes many hundred years back. There is historical evidences that showing that Mongolian scholars, monks, used to come to study at the Nalanda University. And many Indians used to come to Mongolia, because we find many Mongolian scripts, starting the Mongolian Kanjur in India. We found them in India. So based on that, we call each other our spiritual neighbors, so which gives us a very strong historical heritage. Another one example how close connected we are. In the southern province of Mongolia, there is a lake called Ganga. The story says that when in ancient time, when Mongols used to come to India, on the way back, they used to grab water from the sacred river Ganga and bring it to the valley in the southern part of Mongolia and pour it there. So that's how the lake Ganga is created. So it gives us the whole aspect, how close how well connected we are. And every autumn, when you go there, you see the 100,000 birds, migratory birds to gather in there before they fly into the warm countries, including India. And I was in a bird sanctuary next to the Mathura, where I saw at least 3 of them, let's say my birds from my homeland. The reason I'm saying all these historical links that it at least this gives me push, when you think that many thousand, 100 years ago, when there was no any means of transportation, no airplanes, no trains, no cars, barefoot, maximum horse or camel, ox back. So if our ancestors used to travel to each other, and nowadays that if the birds manage somehow to overfly the Himalayas, why we have to sit and live there? We have to interconnect. It gives us a very big, broad historical, the heritage, as I would say. So back to modern history. Mongolia and India established diplomatic relations in 1955. So in 25, we're going to celebrate 70 years of establishment, and we're planning the huge events within the whole year commemoration. So of course, during this 70 years, the historic visit of Prime Minister Modi ji in 2015 played a crucial role for development. It gives us boost. So and during that visit, our both sides agreed to elevate our bilateral relations to the level of strategic partnership, which gives us broader opportunity to develop our bilateral relations in every aspect of our human life. So we see India as one of the most important third neighbor in this region. So given that there are a lot of potential to develop our cooperation in every aspects of the human beings. But as I rightly before said, the world is not, staying in the simple ground. You see the COVID, then the war between Russia and Ukraine. So it gives us a huge difference, especially in case of Mongolia, because we're immediate neighbor with Russia. So it's the aspect of the war, even though it's happening 1,000 kilometers from Mongolian border, but it has a direct effect on us. Started with the air traffic, since before the old flights used to fly over the Mongolia to Russia, but now all avoiding Russia. So starting with this small thing maybe, but it gives us we affected by war too. But on our bilateral relations, we are developing and broadening enriching our cooperation in every aspect of the life. So gave the visit of our speaker in December 21, visit of Speaker Umbrella July this year. Last year we had a fruitful exchange of visits of our defense ministers. And of course, our current president, and Prime Minister Modi ji have a very good, close relations. And in this case, I believe that it is time for our leaders to meet and face to face and talk about the current situation at the world, not only on the bilateral aspect, but on the regional, on the international aspect. Because if you follow the news, Mongolia, India has a similar standpoint on the war of Russia-Ukraine. We supporting that, we're saying that this dispute should be resolved on the negotiation, peaceful means. So I believe that because of that, we're working on to conduct implement the state visit of our president to India in the near future. Given to that, I'm as a new ambassador, comparatively new, 1 year and 9 months who spent here. I believe that the historical link that we had between Mongolia and India, it was lost during that 70 years of communist regime, because we were close to the world while India was fighting for independence, and after independence, India was conducting the non-alignment movement, G77. So it was a little bit, we lost 70 years distance from each other. But so, as I said, it's my first time I'm dealing with India. So within this 1 year and 9 months, so far I managed to travel to 18 states within India, trying to understand India, trying to find areas where we can develop our bilateral cooperation. So as I see it, as of today, I can see that the direct flight will be very crucial for our development of bilateral relations, because people-to-people relations depends on the accessibility. You cannot talk about business or whatever if you live behind a wall and there is no direct. You have to go to the third country. So I believe that there is actually we have this air connection service agreement which was signed in 2015, but it was starting very well, but then the COVID and the war and everything get lost. But I'm trying to start this direct flight issue. So far I met the manager of Air India, the Indigo. So the two companies. I'm looking forward to meet other companies who might be interested. So we exchange opinions how we can continue our cooperation. The whole idea of the direct flight is that if we have direct flight, we will have a direct access between our people. Let's say among the youth. If you meet person and talk with him, you will understand him. If you understand him, maybe you will trust him. Based on that trust, we can do business. Otherwise, how you can trust your money if you don't know the person? How you can give his money saying, okay, let's do business if you're not sure who's the guy? So based on that, I believe that direct flight is one of the crucial aspects of our cooperation. Another thing that I believe we can develop between our two countries is tourism. For Mongolians, India is a land of Lord Buddha. So every Mongolian wants to come to India, go to Bodh Gaya, to go to Dharamsala, has an audience with His Holiness. So there is let's say, the traffic of Mongolians to India, it is already there. Many Mongolians come into medical tourism. Many pilgrims come to India. So there is but from the movement from India to Mongolia, it's not that well developed. When I go around, meet people, mostly people know that Mongolia is somewhere there, Chinggis Khan, that's all. Nothing, not that detailed information. So I believe the development of tourism will bring our people closer, because personally I believe that Mongolia can offer to Indian tourists a lot. Mongolia is one of few countries that managed to preserve its pristine nature. So you can go to western part of the Mongolia, where is the nature similar to Switzerland, when all the Indians love to go to Switzerland. So you can pay less and go to Switzerland in Mongolia. So in the northern part of Mongolia, we have the southern corner of the taiga, the Russian taiga forestry, where the reindeer community, they live in isolated. You can go with them, ride the reindeer, live with them in a tent and everything. In the eastern corner, we have the huge valley goes to many thousand kilometers, where the hills not higher than 2 meters high. It's just plain. You drive whole day, see only wild animals, no human beings. So which I personally miss in India, because I'm trying to drive out of Delhi, but I see only human beings, no open territory, village. So that's one thing you can enjoy in Mongolia. And the territory, the plateau is just plain. So if you sleep in the night, you will see the Milky Way from the one horizon to horizon all the way. It's open area. So this is, I believe, that Mongolia can offer to Indian tourists. And of course, in the southern corner, we have the Gobi Desert. So where you can go there, find the dinosaur fossils. So everything is there. Okay. In this regard, I believe that the Bollywood, I understand that if the Bollywoods do movie in certain countries, all Indians rush there. The Croatia, the Thailand, the Switzerland, you've been there. Everybody rushed there. So I believe that if I manage to bring 1 or 2 Bollywood stars, shoot the movie in Mongolia, so I believe everybody will rush to Mongolia. So I'm looking for that, and there is actually incentives from the Mongolian government saying that if you shoot movie in Mongolia, the government will reimburse up to 50% of all expenses you spend in Mongolia. So 30% if you shoot the movie, it's a TV content or the documentary or the fantastic movie or love drama, whatever, it's 30% automatically. Plus 10 if you hire the local crew or local the actor, and plus 10 if it's related to our Mongolian culture custom. So in totally up to 50% of all expenses you spend in Mongolia will be reimbursed by the Mongolian government. So this is the one incentive of what we can do. Also, another important aspect of our cooperation is Buddhism. Mongolia is a Buddhist country. More than 95% of Mongolian population is Buddhist. So in this case, I'm happy to see that India is within the Policy Act East is developing very good relations with the countries of Buddhism, including Mongolia. So for many Mongolians, as I said before, India is land of Lord Buddha. Everybody wants to come here to go to Bodh Gaya, of course Taj Mahal, and then go to Dharamsala to worship. And the government of India was very keen, supportive on our proposal from our side, and brought the relics of Holy Buddha last June in 2022. So which gives us very significant push in our bilateral cooperations. And as I said, the Mongolian Kanjur is 108 volumes of Mongolian custom, tradition related script was brought to India many thousand years ago. So last year also Indian government printed 75 copies of these 108 volumes of the script and donated to Mongolian monasteries, the Mongolian libraries and universities. In this regards, personally, I believe that that there is some people saying that religion is somehow belongs to the monks or the temples, but I believe religion is within all of us. It should be open to everybody. In this connection, I believe that the 10 scholarship that is Indian government is providing to Mongolians on the Buddhist study should be, they distribute not only among the monks, but also among the other young people, who is willing to study the Buddhism, who's willing to learn what is Buddha is teaching about, so we can develop that bilateral relations in the timely manner, in a proper way, let's say. Also, another aspect I would like to touch upon is that many people asking, such a small country with a small population, 3.4 million, which is less than one district of Delhi, somehow managed to not to be dissolved between Russia and China. So why are we still independent? So personally, I believe that there are three reasons. One is that we are nomads. We follow our livestock, so we move a lot around the year. One family probably can move from 20 to 30 times within the year. So because of that, maybe it's our way of life was different from Russians and China, who are settlers. The second thing is language. Our Mongolian language, it's Altai Uyghur language, and we write from the top to down script, so which is totally different from our China and Russian friends. And third thing, I believe, again, back, it's Buddhism, religion. Buddhism was implemented in Mongolia 3 times. One is during the Huns, the second one was in the 11th century, and the last one in the 16th century, which was succeeded. So I personally believe that at that time, let's say, it was easy for us to get the Russian Orthodox Church or the Chinese Taoism to bring to Mongolia. It's just neighbors. But somehow our ancestors decided to bring the Buddhism from India through Tibet. So I think that they foresee the future, because if you now go to see the war between Russia and Ukraine, if you recall 3 or 4 years ago, there was a huge, let's say, struggle between the Kiev Church that was belonging to Moscow Orthodox Church, but somehow 3 years ago they moved to the Protestant, the Vatican Church. So now we can see that the religion is it's very crucial thing, very important, very dangerous thing to touch. The last events in the Manipur, we can witness it. It's just the march through the settlement. It's what brings the violence. So if it's within the one community, this makes, we can imagine what it can make between the countries. So based on that, I believe that our ancestors was wise enough to bring the religion from the third country, which brings us back to our third neighbor policy. Maybe at that time our ancestors come up with the idea that it's better, the country small like Mongolia, to have something totally different from the both neighbors to keep us unique and as independent as possible. Based on that, as I said, Mongolia is a small country in terms of the population. So to develop, to fight, let's say, to compete, let's say, not to fight, compete with our two neighbors, we have to be mobile, which gives us a good feedback based on the we're nomads. So we have to be very modern. So we have to be more like engineering, IT skill. So computer, IT, AI technology is a very big hope for Mongolians. So based on that, I believe that IT technology cooperation with India, you know that are proud that all the CEOs of the IT companies are Indians. So we believe that our cooperation with India in IT technology will be and should be one of the significant the solution for our development, for our independence of Mongolians. That's how we see it. Of course, the economic cooperation is aspect of between Mongolia and India. It's, let's say, because we opened recently, it's lagging behind. But happily, since the visit of the Modi ji in 2015, the first oil refinery in Mongolia is now under construction with a soft loan from the Indian government. So we actually, initially, it was planned to start operating in 2024, but because of the COVID and everything, it's lagging behind, but it will be operation by 2025, 26 probably. So based on that, now it's time for us, I believe personally, that we have to think about the next big project to be implemented between our two countries. What it can be. For example, it can be the mining, since Mongolia is very rich in mining. And now India is, last year the Prime Minister Modi ji announced that India will produce its own semiconductors. So Mongolia is rich in rare earth elements, which is the integral part of the semiconductors. So maybe we can set up a very good cooperation on that aspect. We're also rich in minerals, copper, gold, uranium, oil, gas, what I name. So I believe that Mongolia can be one of the partners on the growing need of India on the minerals, for minerals. Also, because of the global climate change, Mongolian climate is changing drastically, and we are now facing almost 65% of the Mongolian territory is desertified. So to stop this desertification, because it's not only affecting Mongolia, the so-called the sandstorm created in the Mongolian Gobi now reached Beijing, now reached Seoul, reached Tokyo. So you guys happy because you have the Himalayas that's protecting you. If there was no Himalayas, probably our sandstorm only reached you. So you're lucky guys. So to stop all this development, and because we are the responsible players on the international level, our president came up with the initiative of the billion trees. So we built the billion trees, we can stop the desertification. So I believe that also the green project, as I'm trying to say, can be also a good aspect of our cooperation between Mongolia and India. Because when I go around Delhi, I see many trees which has a barcode. If you read the barcode, it gives you the age, where it brought, so all the information about the tree. So I believe this forest management, the green development, can be also an important aspect of our cooperation in the future. So next aspect, I believe that agriculture can play also good cooperation aspect for Mongolia. Since nowadays, world population already reached 8 billion. But because of the war, Russia and Ukraine, we are now facing the food shortage, food crisis. So as I said, Mongolia is 4 times of France or half of India. but few population. Most of them lives in a capital city. So the whole territory is open. So we can cultivate whatever world needs, maybe crop, wheat, whatever, very simple, and can sell it, feed the world, and make a very good business, mutual profitable for Indians, for Mongolian companies. So agriculture can be also the good aspect of that. Given that also the Mongolia is, we have more than 75 million of livestock. We have a main so-called 5 livestock, which is horse, camel, cow, sheep, goat. So out of that 75 million, we can make very good dairy products, because I say that Mongolian livestock, it's not a farming, it's grasslanding. So they go around, grab the best of the grasses. So the products are ecological, so-called, the non-chemicals, whatever, fertilizer. So we can very good business on the dairy products, the leather, you name it, the poultry, you name it. So it can be a very good, interesting cooperation. The other business cooperation personally I'm pursuing is that Mongolia, we have many rivers, but most of them we call them unpatriotic, because they flown out of the Mongolian territory. They originate from Mongolia, but they're flown out to Russia or either to China. So because of that, we're losing a lot of water. Because of that, we facing this desertification. So I know that there is one company or Indians who are very good in canneling the water from deserted to desert areas from the rich areas. So maybe this kind of cooperation, we can bring all our unpatriotic rivers, put some dams on certain areas, and bring the water to the southern provinces where the desertification is facing. So based on that, we can stop the desertification, grow some plants, some wheat. So by one shoot, we can kill many animals, let's say, so we can stop the desertification, feed the world, so make a green place for us to visit. So it will be, if we go this, it can be a lot of things to discuss. And when we see it, probably you will have other questions. So I'll leave space for you guys. Otherwise, I can talk about my country as any of you talk about your country for hours. So let's pause here, and maybe we can you can have other questions.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think that was a very detailed examination of the opportunities that exist in the relationship from Bollywood to unpatriotic rivers. It's quite a lot to cover, sir. But yes, the floor is open for your questions, quick comments, anything that you want to ask, anything that you have observed and you want to engage the ambassador on. Please feel free. Please introduce yourselves. And so yes.
Good evening, sir. My name is Shivam. I am currently preparing for Indian Civil Services. So it was a very wonderful experience hearing you and to know about your family's connect from India. And sir, I found Mongolia is a very interesting country. It has more horses than human beings. And the weight transition from communism to democracy, it was a very peaceful one. And it stands as a tall democracy between Russia and China. So my question was that you mentioned that your country was among the few countries which had resolved the disputes with China. But if we see in 2016, when His Holiness Dalai Lama had visited Mongolia is a Buddhist majority country, and Dalai Lama is a very reverable figure there. So that time China had put a huge blockade on the border. People were struggling in the winter, and the fares were also raised. So how do you view such bullying by the Chinese neighbor, sir? And how do you plan to tackle such things in the future?
Yes, first of all, it's good afternoon. I believe evening starts after 6 p.m., but for you probably it's already evening. Yes, Mongolia is a Buddhist country, and we see the Dalai Lama as a head of Buddhist religion. For us, he's living Buddha. Yes, it is true that in 2016, during the last visit, the Chinese put some issue on us. But as it was officially informed during the visit of our Prime Minister to China this year, we respect the one China policy, which we see that the issue of Taiwan issue and other aspects, it's internal issue of China. Same thing for us, for Mongolians. As a democratic country, our religion and state is separated. We're a secular state. So we see the visit of the Dalai Lama as a visit of the religious person, not the political person. He's visited, so far I recall the Dalai Lama visited Mongolia 7 times, if I'm not mistaken. So all the visit was taken as political visit, as a religious visit, not a political. So during that visit, he never make any political statements. Our leaders never made any political statement about Tibet. So we are open, we're very clear on that saying that the Dalai Lama visit, it's only by the request of the Mongolian Buddhists, and it should be only religious. We are not involved in any political talks with any political statements from our side. So this is our official position on that. But as you see, the big powers is always doing their own job. So we open for talks about the issue. During our official visits, we always say that for us, One China policy is official policy of the Mongolia. We support the policy. We respect the policy. At the same time, we, as a democratic country, we respect the wish of Mongolian people to practice the Buddhism. In this regard, we cannot say if the people of Mongolia want to invite religious figure to visit Mongolia, we are not against it. If you go back to history, the Karakorum was the capital, I think one of few capitals in the world where all religions were presented. There was one Buddhist temple, one Orthodox temple. There was 2 mosques. So there are all religions at that time was presented in Mongolia. So based on that, so now, as I said, tomorrow the Pope is visiting Mongolia. So it gives a clear signal that Mongolia is respecting religion, and everybody is free to practice their own religion. We have in the western corner in Mongolia, we have the Islamic population. We have Hindu temples in Mongolia. We have the Christian church. We have even the mosques, and we have even the Jewish community in Mongolia. Small, compared to small, but they practice it. So for us, it's religious issue.
Vivek Mishra from ORF. Thank you, Excellency, for a wonderful talk. So you talked a little bit about the disadvantages of being a landlocked state in terms of supply chain connectivity and others. I was wondering if what are the advantages for being a landlocked country for Mongolia? The second question is, as you see the semiconductor race really heightening in the coming times, China being your neighbor, what are the likelihood of China entering for critical minerals, and how does that place Mongolia vis-a-vis the United States, given the context of the tech war? Thank you.
About landlocked situation, of course, it is as of today gives us a lot of disadvantages, but as we all say, every crisis, let's say, there is a lose, but there is again gain. For example, the COVID, what we see, it was a lot of loss of more than almost 70 million of human lives. Yes, it's tragic, but at the same time, the people now prefer to do the Zoom meeting than going all gathering everybody together. So it gives us pro cons in every aspect. So being the landlocked countries gives us more thing to think over. As I said, there are 34 landlocked countries around the world, and based on our initiative, Mongolia, we established the landlocked development countries think tank in Mongolia. So we bringing the voice of landlocked countries to the UN Assembly. So based on that, there are certain UN resolutions saying that the neighbors who has access to the sea has to provide the same access to the country who doesn't have this access to the sea. So this kind of, let's say, the similar positions of 34 countries backed up some developing countries, as we say the South, global South. So it's one part of, let's say, global South. So we see that the joint, before, I don't know, maybe 10, 20 years, nobody was talking about that. Nobody would mention landlocked countries, but now everybody knows that landlocked countries. If you go to most of the UN conferences, UN resolutions, the summit outcomes, declarations, most of them includes the accessibility to the landlocked countries, providing accessibility. So this is the, let's say, advantage that we can bring to the world community, as the India is doing now, as during the presidency of G20, the voice in the global South. Similar thing happens to the landlocked countries. So this is the one, I mean, the advantage or development as we are starting this, landlocked countries development movements. The other was focus on the second question.
US, China.
Yes. Yes, if you see the world is now facing a lot of heat, as you rightly said, over the critical minerals or rare earth elements. India just, in May, I believe, or April, just come up the list of report on the list of coming up the critical elements and doing a lot of on legislative how to resolve the issue of landlocked the critical minerals. So there are a lot of deposits next to border of Mongolia of critical minerals within the China. So this is, let's say, how the China has own, the deposits of the critical minerals. But if you recall the visit of French President Macron to Mongolia, it was also related to the critical minerals uranium exploration. So again, as a landlocked country, we want to come up with certain independent on the energy resource. So this cooperation with the French government will give us advantage. Of course, the recent visit of our Prime Minister to Washington, D.C., and our talk about renewable energy, the critical minerals, also gives us the opportunity to develop it. And since the Mongolia is an independent country, we see that it will not affect our bilateral relations with our neighbors. It will give us more opportunity to cooperate in using the mineral resources, the uranium, the nuclear power as a peaceful mean for development. So we don't see that it will affect our bilateral relations.
Good afternoon, Ambassador. My name is Himani Agrawal and I'm a scholar at Indian School of Public Policy. Adding on the question that he asked, if we say that Mongolia wants to open its economy, it will include many players in the field. And being one of the major player like India and China, won't it become another economic battleground like Sri Lanka and Africa, where the major aim is to extract the resources? And secondly, adding on that, if we say that economic development happens in the Mongolia in the terms of the IT sector and the mining sector, it will result in more of a settled lifestyle. And won't it deviate from the nomadic lifestyle of the Mongolians? And the major source, you said that they have remained independent for the years because of the nomadic lifestyle.
About our nomadic style, I don't think that it will affect, because as of today, around 30% of Mongols still live in the nomadic life. They kind of live in the countryside. They do the herders family. They move around a lot. But at the same time, they have the solar panel, the windmill. They have all the access to the internet from the countryside. So development IT technology, I don't think that it will affect the rural life. Yes, rural life, herders. But it will enrich the nomad's life because nowadays, there are, if we're starting, let's say in early 2000, when the shift from the one system to another caused us a lot of migration from rural areas to urban areas. Now we see that some people now is moving back to countryside because, again, it's the ecological issue, the self-sufficiency. You're not dependent. The life is, unfortunately, it's getting expensive everywhere. So if you go to live in a countryside, the government will subsidize you, support you. So there was some solutions. So many people, especially young people, decided to go to countryside to live. So they have access. It doesn't matter nowadays. It doesn't matter whether you're in a capital city or in the rural area. We have the Starlinks from the the Elon Musk company. So you can just use the internet every time. So the combination, IT and nomadic life will be, and I believe it will be very interesting solution to that. The enriching the life of nomads. Before the nomads was, the referring as, somehow people think that civilization. When we talk about the development civilization, we always think about the Western way of development civilization. But there is a nomadic way of civilization. Same as the Indian civilization, so there is I believe the coexistence of this the modern technological development and preserving the nature, the nomadic way of life, so the family style. So everything can be combined, and it can be very beneficial for all of us. That's how I see it.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Abhigan Pandey, and I'm from South Asian University. So my question is regarding Inner Mongolia, which is a part of China, and we have seen the rising tensions between China and other countries. But then in the Inner Mongolia, we have I was reading this news where Chinese government has started to inculcate Han language in the schools there, and therefore there may be chance of demographic shift and as well as cultural shift as well. So do you think it has a threat to Mongolia, because Mongolia and Mongolia?
Yes, the Chinese government put, let's say, restrictions. It's my understanding that they put some restrictions in teaching Mongolian in secondary high schools. The limited timing of the Mongol language teaching. But personally, I don't see that it will affect Mongolia because we're independent. Our border is there. Since let's say, some activities, let's say, from the Chinese government limiting the teaching in the Mongolians, there are a lot of Inner Mongolians who is now is openly, the talking in Mongolian, the singing in Mongolian, dancing in Mongolian. So I don't think that it will greatly affect, the negatively affect Mongolia and especially Inner Mongolians. There is some certain aspects of the country as itself. So it's like any country, you have the official language, you have to conduct some training in official languages. So personally, I see that it's not that big issue for us. So it won't affect Mongolia at all because it's within the border of the neighboring country. And the Mongols in Inner Mongolia, they practice in talking Mongolian like before. So it doesn't think that it will affect at all.
India looks at Mongolia as an important partner under ACNI's policy in Northeast Asia, under ACNI policy, and then under extended neighborhood. So what we see is like bilateral relationship between India under these policies. They often sometimes are cited as against China and as a strategic partnership against China. So does Mongolia see relations with India in the context of strategic autonomy or balancing influence of China?
Since India is conducting its own policy, and Mongolia is conducting India, in the case of India's Act East policy, in Mongolia's third neighbor policy, I would say that none of those policies is neglecting any other countries. So it's just pursuing own interests. So I don't think that the developments, our bilateral relations will harm anybody. It will be only for beneficial for development of our two countries. So I don't think that the Act East policy will somehow affect our third neighbor. Also, that Mongolian third neighbor policy will affect our immediate neighbors. I don't think so. Mongolia, from the very beginning, supported the initiative of India on International Solar Alliance, and we applied to become a member of this alliance. And now we concluded the domestic procedures to become a full-fledged member of the alliance. I believe that this initiative is very important, and Mongolia and India will gain to doing cooperation in the solar renewable energy aspect. In case of Mongolia, we have more than 270 sunny days per year, so it will give us better benefit for Mongolia to become a member of international ISA. And of course, given the Indian expertise, I was in Gurgaon and the National Solar Energy Institution. I spent the whole day. It was a lot of things is done there. So I was happy to see that many Mongolians coming to study for short-term courses there. And one of the starting points that our foreign ministry building is now doing its solar panel coverage for the roof, so we can provide the energy for our foreign ministry for the first time to become fully independent. So these kind of initiatives, I mean, the projects can, I'm quite sure that in the future we will have better understanding what we can do together, and the Indian expertise, we can work on that and develop much broader cooperation, given the sense that our Gobi, it's a huge land. We can put the whole solar panel, the energy sector in there, so we can use it, and we can export the energy to neighbors.
So I'm Akshita. I am a recent law graduate from Symbiosis Law School. My question is again about China. You talked about how Mongolia supports the one nation policy of China, and how you feel secure in how the history of Mongolia being a nomadic region, and you having the mobility and the unique culture in your own history, having safeguarded you from the aggressions that were initially there in Russia and China. However, as we've seen that China has been very aggressive in its territorial aggression, and there is cartographic aggression where they are releasing new maps and creating new boundaries, where land that is not officially acquired by them is now being shown to be a part of the Chinese territory. So my first question is, does Mongolia feel secure enough right now that such acts of passive territorial aggression would not be carried out against the state of Mongolia? And second, are there any sort of plans that are being taken up with third neighbors to secure its future, any sort of future aggressions that China might take up against the state of Mongolia, if it ever faces a problem where it feels like, okay, we might need to acquire some land from the Mongolia side as well?
It's a very interesting question, let's say. Of course, as an independent country, we always should be aware what is going on our immediate neighbor and the far distance. But as I said, we settled our territorial dispute with China starting from 1961. So as of now, we don't see any threat from Chinese side. There is no any typographical or whatever, the issue from the Chinese side saying that this belongs to China. So our territory so far, as of today, we don't see any threat. About future, I don't know. I haven't been there yet, so I cannot say for future that everything is possible nowadays. Personally, I see that I would never in my nightmare, I would imagine that Russia will start the war. But they started the war, sorry. But who knows? We have to see, and of course, certain thoughts thinking is always there. That's why the think tanks are working. That's why the National Security Council is working. So there is certain, let's say, the predictions of thinking it might happen. But as of now, I have no comments on what future will bring.
Afternoon, sir. My name is Pooja. I am a research scholar from JNU. So my question is, what is Mongolia's stand on China's One Belt, One Road initiative? And do you think it will help Mongolia to move from, if you're joining OBOR, it will help Mongolia to move from landlocked country to a land-linked country, or it will increase Mongolia's dependence on China? What is your point of view? Thank you.
Mongolia, as a neighboring country, we see that, as I said before, we see that development of our neighbors is also beneficial for us. In that sense, we see that the One Belt policy project, it will be beneficial for us. So it might connect us to the Middle East much shorter than going through all the Russia, you know. So we see that there is opportunity for us, and we are trying to be part of it. But again, it's under the construction. A lot of projects. It's in the future. So we see it, and we see that it will be also, as I said, possibility to Mongolia to bring our landlocked position less than less and more advantage than the disadvantage.
Are you aware of? Most of the projects, are they working? Are they on schedule? As far as you are concerned, as far as your information is available, because a lot of the other countries, we find that things have fallen behind in many of these projects, and there has been a certain amount of concern with regard to China that they are not as perhaps invested in some of these projects as they were in the past. So do you see a change with regard to Mongolian projects, or is it continuing as per your information from the past?
Of course, there is some delay in the projects. Again, it's now everybody says due to COVID. And of course, there is some certain delay to the war in Russia, Ukraine. But in generally, of course, the idea is there. And but implementation, because of the Chinese approach to the issue and the way how they put let's say the railways or the other the connectivity, it's due to geopolitical issue, geographical issue. It's lagging behind, but there are opportunities for that project, I believe.
Good afternoon, Ambassador. This is Prakhyat Mathur from Indian School of Public Policy. Sir, I want to know, in the context of Vision 2050, what role India can play to fulfill the economic aspirations of Mongolia? And are there any top 3 economic areas where Mongolia and India could leverage their close relations?
Yes, as I said in our Vision 2050, the economic development of Mongolia the GDP should be doubled at least by 2050, and the living condition of the population should be improved 3 times. So, in that aspect, I believe that Mongolia, India can benefit in many areas. Some of them I mentioned here, and of course, as of now, the mining is one of the major aspects of our economic development. So we see that development of mining sectors between Mongolia and India will play one of the important aspects. I had a talk with the Secretary of the Ministry of Mines. I met him a couple of times, and we agreed that in September, the delegation from the Ministry of Mines and Coals is visiting Mongolia. So maybe by the October, when the Mongolian Ministry of Mines and the Heavy Industry will conduct the Mongolian Mining Week in October, we can come up with certain documents to be signed, agreed. This is the one thing. The other aspect, I think, personally, I see that is a green economy. This kind of thing, that green economy that can be developed between our 2 countries, which will benefit not only our 2 countries, but on the region and of course on the world level. And of course, the third thing, as I said, it's economy, agriculture. So everything is related on the green culture, the green development. So that's how, if you name 3 of them, I would say that.
Hello everyone, my name is Narada. I'm from JNU. I'm doing PhD in International Studies. So my question is, since we know that Mongolia is a landlocked country, and earlier you had a great option of balancing between Russia and China, but in changing world scenario, Russia and China are getting closer. So don't you think that it will put some restraint on Mongolia's foreign policy in coming days?
Yes and no, of course. Since the history gives us a very good lesson when we see the history, and when our two neighbors get in very close to each other, it's not that beneficial for us. But I don't think that, let's say, the proclaiming that the friendship or cooperation of Russia and China has no limits, it doesn't give that them the full fledged of that meaning, because if we see now how the situation in the world economy, geopolitics gains, some experts, the scientists or the researchers say that from this cooperation, China is only the gaining one. Russia is losing more. So I don't think that let's say, our two neighbors becoming more closer. It won't. It won't give pressure on us, on our independence. So we see that if our two neighbors will get closer, I believe in a certain point we can gain, of course, something. But again, in certain points we can lose. But I cannot say right now that this is the thing that we're losing, that this is the thing that we're gaining. So there is again pro cons and every time, everything. So, but personally, I don't think that it will directly affect us in a near future.
Good afternoon, I'm Vinayak from South Asian University. My question is, as Mongolia is part of aggressive strategy of India, which is to counter string of pearls strategy of China, what are the implications of the, and recently we have concluded nomadic elephant bilateral military exercise last month, India and Mongolia. And being Mongolia a strategic country for China, as there are energy pipelines going through the country, and recently Mongolia also having talks regarding power of Siberia 2 pipeline, and how China perceives India's presence in Mongolia, right? And what are the implications of these on Mongolian and China relations?
Yes, our bilateral defense cooperation is a very big aspect of our cooperation. About the Chinese, I think we have to ask them how they see it. For us, it's fine. We're doing okay because, as I said, there's a small country which is sandwiched between big two powers. We see that our army should be. We cannot bring million people army. It's certain. So we want to make our army as compatible, as strategically move rapid development. Because of that, we're doing the regular military exercises with the Russians, with the Chinese, with the Indians. That we have international conquest every year. There is Americans, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Russians, Indians. Everybody is there. So for us, we don't see that. This kind of the training will somehow affect our neighbors' bilateral relations. And at the very beginning, it's our foreign policy officially states that we are against any alliance, and we will not give the opportunity for the third party to use our territory against our neighbors. So it is a very clear picture, position of Mongolia. And since that, we don't see that this kind of, the training will somehow influence our bilateral relations. And Mongolia is one of the top 10 donors of the international peacekeeping operations. So we see that through this international engagement, we can preserve our independence. Of course, we can improve our the defense capability. And based on that, we see that cooperation on the defense field between Mongolia and India can only benefit for both of us.
I have to ask, because you pointed this out, that Government of India has announced 10 scholarships on Buddhist studies. But given the large number of students sitting around the table, are there other student exchange programs or academic programs in the pipeline, or that perhaps you are aware of, between India and Mongolia that one can talk about? Because this is, as you rightly pointed out, connecting the youth of the two countries is a very important part of creating the next generation of leaders and people who will continue to engage with each other through thick and thin. So how are we doing on academic terms? Because there's a large pool of very talented people here, large pool of very talented people in your country. How can we connect with each other more and more efficiently?
Yes, as of today, beside that 10 Buddhist scholarships, Indian government provides 50 scholarships for Mongolian students to come to study in India. At the same time, there is a few scholarship in Mongolia is offered to Indian students. So far, I know only two are used. The two gentlemen are studying now in Mongolia. I know that at the GNU there is the Mongol language study. So I know there is around 23 students studying Mongolian. So you can pursue that and apply. There is a scholarship under auspice of our president, also the scholarship of the government. So there is an opportunity not only to bring in Mongolians to India, but also bringing Indians to Mongolia. So based on that, I see that our bilateral relations, as we call each other, spiritual neighbors, the educational aspect of our cooperation is very important. So we see that now, since that in Mongolia, we're now building the friendship school. So I believe that curriculum of that school, it's a secondary and high school. So curriculum of that school should be Indian, so which gives the Mongolian kids graduating from that high school can automatically come to India and continue their study in India. Same thing, I encourage the Indians to go to Mongolia because there are possibilities to live in Mongolia, to work and learn Mongolian, because knowing the language gives you the knowledge of the culture, custom, and everything. Based on that, we will be understanding, and based on that, we will know our history, and based on that, we can do better cooperation in a broader aspect. So there are opportunities for Indians to go to study in Mongolia, but because, as I said, Mongolia is, let's say, new thing for Indians. I believe it's going to take a couple of years to Indians to explore that opportunity to study in Mongolia.
I think everyone would agree with me that this was a very engaging session we had with you, and you patiently sat with us for much longer than we had intended to, and answered all our questions. Thank you so much, and please keep coming back to ORF and engage with our youth like you did today. I think all of them would have benefited a lot from this engagement. And thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Please also join us for other such events through the course of the year. Can we give a big round of applause?